I came back from my mother's place, and strangers were changing the locks in my apartment. My husband was calmly watching TV. We decided that 3 rooms is too much for us. My sisters and their families will live here now. I silently took out my phone and called my brother, whose existence my husband didn't even know about. An hour later, 10 uniformed men knocked on the door, and my husband fainted when he found out why they had come. Hello. Write in the comments where you're from. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Enjoy listening. But to understand how this day turned into a real nightmare, we need to go back a couple of hours earlier. Rebecca Highmore stood in front of the heavy oak door of her apartment and couldn't believe her own hands. The key that had served her faithfully for 10 years slid into the lock but refused to turn. She tried again, leaned her shoulder against the door, pulled the handle. Useless. Metal hit metal, dull and unyielding. She set the heavy bag of gifts from her mother down on the floor. Jars of homemade preserves clinked. Rebecca wiped her forehead. She was 38 years old, head of logistics at a large company, someone who solved supply problems worth millions of dollars. And yet here she was, standing in her own building, feeling like a lost schoolgirl. Sounds came from behind the door. Not the silence of an empty apartment she had expected. Someone was inside. And that someone felt very much at home. Rebecca pressed her ear to the cold surface. Loud, rough female laughter. The stomp of feet, not in slippers, but in outdoor shoes on her worn parquet floor. Then came a sound that made Rebecca's insides go cold. The ring of broken porcelain. Thin, pitiful, unmistakable. It was the sugar bowl from her grandmother's set, the one they took out only on big holidays, the one she treasured like the apple of her eye. She pressed the doorbell and held it down for a full 10 seconds. Silence fell behind the door. Shuffling footsteps, the clank of a bolt, a new, unfamiliar bolt that hadn't been there that morning. The door swung open. Derek stood in the doorway. Her husband. The man she had lived with for 5 years. He was wearing a burgundy silk robe Rebecca had given him for their wedding anniversary. The robe was open at the chest, his face shiny with satisfaction. In his hand was a half-eaten sandwich with her favorite sausage. "Oh, Becca," he said, not even trying to look surprised. "You're back so early? We thought you'd stay at your mom's until evening." Rebecca looked at him, then past his shoulder. In her entryway, usually spotless, stood dirty plaid bags like the ones market vendors use. Strange jackets hung on her coat rack, reeking of cheap tobacco. "Why doesn't my key work?" she asked quietly, steel already ringing in her voice. "And who broke my grandmother's sugar bowl?" Derek lazily scratched his stomach and stepped aside, letting her in as if doing her a favor. "Why start with the dishes? That's nothing, everyday stuff. Come in, meet everyone. The family council decided we need to expand. Or downsize?" Rebecca stepped inside. In her living room, right on the couch, sat 2 women. One was large, with a short haircut and a predatory look, Marie. The other was younger, thin, with tight, pinched lips, Eileen. They looked at Rebecca not like guests, but like owners annoyed by a servant's interruption. Eileen was holding a shard from the same sugar bowl and casually tossed it onto the carpet. "Oh, don't shake like that," she said in a creaky voice. "Just some old junk. We're putting our own rules in place here." Rebecca noticed that on her windows where expensive curtains had always hung, the women were already trying to attach some garish orange synthetic fabric. "Derek," Rebecca turned to her husband. "What is going on here? Who are these people?" Derek smirked, looking down at her. His eyes showed the triumph of someone who had waited a long time to show his power. "These are my sisters, Rebecca. Marie and Eileen. They have nowhere to live, tough situation. And you and I have 3 rooms. 3 for 2 people. That's selfish, Rebecca. We talked it over and decided they'll live with us. With their families, of course. The kids will arrive soon." "You decided? In my apartment?" Rebecca clenched her fists until her knuckles turned white. "In ours, dear, ours," Marie drawled from the couch, crossing her legs. "You're the wife, and the husband is the head of the family. If he said so, that's how it'll be. Don't like it? The door is right there. Go back to your mommy in the village, that's where you belong." Derek stepped right up to Rebecca. He smelled of cognac. "Don't make a scene," he whispered in her ear, loud enough for his sisters to hear. "I changed the locks. You don't have keys. Behave yourself and we'll give you a small bedroom. Start screaming and we'll throw you out. You're alone, Rebecca. You have no one but me. Accept it." He was waiting for tears. He was used to Rebecca always smoothing things over, always looking for compromise. He was sure she would cry, run to the bathroom, and by evening start cooking dinner for the whole crowd, trying to earn their approval. But Rebecca didn't cry. Her face suddenly went completely calm, like a stone mask. The surprise vanished from her eyes, replaced by a cold, calculating gleam, the same look careless suppliers feared at work. She slowly scanned the room. The shards on the floor. The stranger's bags. Derek's smug face. The women's brazen eyes. "I understand you," she said evenly. Rebecca turned around and walked out of the apartment. "Hey!" Derek shouted after her. "Where are you going? Grocery shopping? Buy some vodka, we've got something to celebrate." The sisters' laughter followed her to the stairwell. The door slammed shut behind her. The new lock clicked. Rebecca walked over to the window in the stairwell. Her hands weren't shaking. She took out her phone. In her contacts was a number she hadn't dialed in exactly 20 years, since the day they buried their father. The ringing went on for a long time. Rebecca stared at the gray courtyard, the playground, her husband's parked car. "Bob with her bonus." "Yeah, a low, hoarse male voice answered. No greeting. Rebecca took a deep breath. "The infestation is here," she said into the phone. It was a phrase from their childhood, a code she and her brother had invented while playing spies. But this wasn't a game now. "Bring the tools." There was a pause on the other end. "Just a second." "Address?" the voice asked. The tone changed instantly from sleepy to focused and hard. "My home. Apartment 48. They're inside." "Got it." "Wait." Rebecca ended the call and sat on the windowsill. She sat there for an hour. A neighbor, Mrs. Valentine, peeked out of her door, saw Rebecca, wanted to ask something but met her heavy stare and slipped back inside. Rebecca could hear music blasting behind her apartment door. They were celebrating their victory. Derek was probably pouring the cognac she had saved for her boss's anniversary. Let them drink. It was their last toast. Exactly 60 minutes later, the elevator hummed. The doors slid open. Not 2, not 3, but 10 men stepped onto the landing. Strong men in full gear, black masks, body armor. Large white letters stood out on their backs, economic security. They moved silently and in sync, like a single machine. Leading them was a tall man with gray at his temples. He had the same eyes as Rebecca Gray, cold. Michael Winter, a colonel, her half-brother. He didn't even nod at her, just waved his hand to his men. "Let's work," he ordered quietly. 2 officers with a battering ram approached the new door Derek had locked so proudly an hour earlier. "Open up." "Police," one of them barked. The music stopped inside. Footsteps followed. The lock clicked. Derek must have thought it was a local officer responding to a noise complaint. He flung the door open with a wide, condescending smile, ready to talk his way out. "Officer, what's all the noise about? We're just sitting here with family, not bothering anyone." He didn't get to finish. The special forces stormed into the apartment like a hurricane. Derek was slammed face-first into the wall, his arms twisted behind his back. The sisters shrieked on the couch as 2 officers yanked them up and forced them to face the wall. "What are you doing?" Derek screamed, writhing. "This is my apartment. It's a family argument. I'll file a complaint." "Rebecca, tell them, did you really call the police over a lock? Are you crazy?" Michael Winter slowly stepped into the entryway. He took off his gloves and pulled a folded sheet of paper from his inner pocket. He didn't look at Rebecca. He looked only at Derek, whose cheek was pressed against the wallpaper as he tried to protest. "Citizen Derek Highmore?" Michael asked in an icy tone. "Yes. And you'll answer for this mess. This is just a domestic issue." My wife is hysterical. Michael stepped closer and unfolded the paper right in front of his face. What domestic issue, Citizen Highmore? This is a search and arrest warrant. Charge, large-scale fraud. Derek stopped struggling. He blinked, trying to focus. What fraud? He croaked. I didn't do anything. I just changed the locks. Michael smirked. His smile was frightening. We're not interested in locks. We're interested in $30 million siphoned from a logistics company over the last 6 months. Shipments of electronics diverted using invoices signed with your wife's digital signature. A signature that, as we established, was activated from your personal laptop while your wife was asleep. A dead silence fell over the apartment. Even Marie and Eileen stopped breathing. Rebecca stood in the doorway, staring at her husband. Derek went pale. The color drained from his face as if someone had pulled the plug. His eyes rolled back, his legs gave out, and he slid down the wall like a sack of potatoes, collapsing at the colonel's feet. Medic, Michael said shortly, stepping over his limp brother-in-law. We need him alive. He hasn't told us everything about the forged signatures yet. While the paramedic brought Derek back around, the officers were already turning the apartment upside down. Rebecca stepped inside, carefully avoiding the scattered boots of the riot police. Her home, her fortress, had turned into a battlefield in minutes. Classic novels flew off the shelves, dresser drawers were ripped out with a crash, their contents dumped straight onto the floor. Rebecca walked into the bedroom and froze. Her vanity was gone. Instead of the elegant walnut dressing table she'd inherited from her mother stood a cheap plastic shelf, piled with bright makeup tubes Rebecca had never used. She opened the wardrobe. Empty. Her dresses, business suits, coats, everything was gone. Tasteless synthetic robes, leopard print leggings, and stretched-out sweaters hung on the hangers. She ran into the kitchen, where one of the operatives was tapping on the wall. Where are my things? She asked, not addressing anyone in particular. Marie, seated on a chair under the watch of an armed officer, suddenly burst out laughing. The laugh was harsh, barking. In the trash, sweetheart, she spat. Eileen and I took everything out yesterday. Old-fashioned junk. And your photo albums, we burned them in the yard, in a barrel. They were just taking up space. Rebecca felt the ground slip from under her feet. The albums. The only photos of her father, young and smiling. Pictures from graduation, from her first trips. All burned. Like garbage. She slowly turned to Marie. The fear was gone. Only icy rage remained. You're not sisters, Rebecca said quietly. Sisters don't do this. Who are you really? Eileen snorted and turned away, but Marie leaned forward as far as the handcuffs allowed. You're sharp, she sneered. Of course we're not sisters. We're Derek's partners. And you're just a walking wallet. A workhorse. You busted your ass at work day and night while Derek lived it up. You think he loved you? He laughed at you every evening while we sat in restaurants spending your money. My hard worker, that's what he called you. Rebecca looked at the women and suddenly understood everything. The whole puzzle clicked into place. The locks weren't changed just to move in relatives. It was a cover operation. They were in a hurry. She rushed into her husband's study. The desk had already been torn apart by the officers, but that wasn't what she was after. She dropped to her knees in the corner, pulled back the rug. Beneath the parquet floor was a hidden compartment. Her father had built it during the financial crisis, and Rebecca had been sure Derek didn't know about it. The floorboard looked fresh. It had clearly been opened recently and crudely nailed back. Rebecca hooked the edge with her fingernails. Empty. The safe embedded in the floor had been ripped out completely. Only a hole remained, gaping with black emptiness. What are you looking for? Michael's voice sounded behind her. Rebecca jumped up. They knew about the hiding place. Mike, they weren't just living here. They were looking for something specific. She grabbed her tablet, which had somehow survived on the windowsill, and opened the location app. Derek's car had a tracker installed, a requirement from the insurance company for his comprehensive policy, which he always forgot about. Look. Rebecca pointed at the screen. This is his route for the past week. Every night he didn't drive home, he went to the City Credit Bank building. Not during business hours, late at night. 2 or 3 in the morning. Michael frowned at the map. The bank is closed at night. To clients, yes. Not to employees. He was meeting someone on the inside. Mike, he was taking something valuable out. The safe is empty. Money from company accounts is just numbers. But what was in the safe couldn't be transferred digitally. Michael looked at his sister carefully. Respect appeared in his eyes. She wasn't hysterical, wasn't crying over the burned photos. She was working. Like a true logistics manager, she was building the chain. I want to be present at the interrogation, Rebecca said firmly. I know him better than you do. I know where to press. Not aloud, Michael cut her off. You're a victim. Go to the kitchen, drink some water. Mike. Rebecca grabbed the sleeve of his uniform jacket. This is my home. My life, which he trampled. I have the right to know what he did. He's not just a thief, he's dash she didn't finish. One of the operatives working with documents in the living room called out to the colonel. Colonel. Found something. In the bag belonging to Citizen Savon. A folder with documents. Michael quickly walked over, put on latex gloves, and opened the folder. Rebecca stood beside him, holding her breath. On top lay a contract. Thick paper with watermarks. Michael skimmed the text, and his face darkened. He slowly looked up at Rebecca. What is it? She asked, feeling a cold lump rise in her throat. He sold the car. The country house. Michael silently handed her the document. Read. Rebecca took the sheet. The letters jumped before her eyes, but the meaning hit instantly, like an electric shock. It was a loan agreement. Collateral. The apartment. Her apartment, a 3-bedroom in the city center, her father's inheritance. It had been pledged to a private lender at an enormous interest rate. Loan amount, $20 million. The repayment deadline had expired yesterday. But the worst part was at the bottom of the page. In the pledger line was a signature. Rebecca traced the ink with her finger. The curl on the R, the sharp final stroke. It was her signature. A perfect copy. So perfect that even she might have doubted herself if she didn't know for certain she had never signed this document. That's not me, she whispered. Mike, I didn't sign this. I swear. I know, her brother said quietly. An expert examination will prove it's a forgery. But right now, on paper, this apartment no longer belongs to you. Tomorrow collectors from this lender will come here. And they'll have the legal right to throw you out onto the street. Rebecca lifted her eyes to Derek. He had come to and was sitting on the floor, leaning against the wall. He had heard everything. And he was smiling. A weak, spiteful smile of a man who, even losing, managed to strike one last blow. You thought I was just sitting at home for nothing? He rasped. I was learning, Rebecca. For 2 years I practiced signing your name. Every night, while you were stuck at the office. Now prove it wasn't you. The apartment is gone. You're homeless, my love. Rebecca let the paper slip from her fingers. It drifted down gently to the floor, into the pile of trash her life had become. Rebecca didn't listen anymore. She stepped over Derek's legs without even looking at him, grabbed the car keys, and ran out of the apartment. The elevator felt too slow, so she flew down the stairs, skipping steps. Only one thought pounded in her head, Mom. If they'd gotten to the apartment documents, if they'd been preparing this hit for so long, then they could have gotten to her too. Valentina Kiselieva lived in an old private house on the edge of the city. Rebecca drove so fast that oncoming cars nervously hugged the shoulder. Her hands were wet on the steering wheel. When she burst into the house, her mother was sitting in the kitchen. A cup of cold tea stood in front of her, and her hands were trembling. She was pale as a sheet. Mom. Rebecca rushed to her, wrapped her arms around her shoulders. Are you okay? Were they here? Valentina lifted frightened eyes to her daughter. They were, sweetheart. An hour ago 2 women left so brazen, so loud. They said they were from Derek. What did they want? Rebecca squeezed her mother's hands, trying to give her even a bit of warmth. A power of attorney, Rebecca. Full authority to manage all property. They said Derek was in trouble, that you knew, that it was the only way to save the family from shame. Did you sign it? Rebecca's heart skipped. Of course not. I'm old school, I don't sign documents without my glasses. I told them you should come yourself and say it. Rebecca exhaled. Thank God. But they. Her mother's voice dropped to a whisper. They said such things about your father, Rebecca. They said they had papers. That during the financial crisis your dad wasn't just doing business, he was deceiving people. Then he stole money from depositors. And if I didn't sign, they'd give those papers to the newspapers. Shame for the whole city, Rebecca. For our whole family name. Rebecca felt a cold fury boil inside her. This wasn't just taking an apartment. This was a war meant to destroy. They were hitting the most painful place: her father's memory, their reputation, her mother's health. Mom, listen to me, Rebecca said firmly, looking straight into her eyes. It's a lie. All of it. Those women are scammers. Derek is a thief. We'll put them away. Don't believe anyone, don't open the door to anyone. Lock up and stay quiet. I'll handle everything. She kissed her mother's forehead, checked the locks, and got back into the car. Now she needed a different place. She remembered Derek's words, 2 years I practiced. Someone had to have seen it. An apartment isn't a bunker, walls are thin, and gossip in their building spreads faster than the internet. She called Jim Axford. Jim was her childhood friend, they'd grown up in the same courtyard. Now he ran a small workshop making keys and repairing locks right in the basement of their building. Jim, are you there? I'm coming. I need to know everything you saw. 20 minutes later she was walking down into the smoke-stained basement. Jim sat at his workbench, filing a duplicate key. When he saw Rebecca's face, he set the file aside. Heard you had a costume party up there, he said instead of hello. The whole courtyard's buzzing. Jim, did you change the locks? Rebecca asked bluntly. No, Becca. I refused. Derek came a week ago and asked. I told him I wouldn't do it without the owner. He freaked out, said he'd find someone else. And before that, did you see them together? Derek and those sisters? Jim sighed and wiped his hands on a rag. I did. More than once. They went to his garage. I thought maybe distant relatives. But they're strange, Becca. Once I walked past, the door was slightly open. They were sitting at a table, lights on. And you know what they were doing? Writing. Just sitting there writing on pieces of paper. 4 hours. I remember thinking grown women, but like schoolgirls practicing handwriting. And Derek stood over them, bossing them around, press harder, the slant is wrong. Rebecca closed her eyes. The puzzle was snapping into place. This wasn't just cheating. This was a professional crew. Apartment raiders. They wormed their way in, lived for years, study habits, handwriting, find weak spots and then strike. A full takeover, as they call it. Jim, I need your help. Not as a locksmith, as a witness. But first I need them to relax. I need them to think they've won. What are you planning? Jim looked at her carefully. I'm going to give them their minute of fame. Rebecca left the basement and called a journalist she knew from the local city paper. Irene, hi. It's Rebecca Highmore. Remember you asked for an interview about interior design in old buildings? I've got an exclusive for you. A new life for an old apartment. Come right now. Yes, with a photographer. It'll be very interesting. An hour later, Rebecca stood at her apartment door. The police had already left, taking Derek in for questioning, but the sisters remained. There were no grounds to detain them yet, without proof of their direct involvement in the money theft. They sat in the apartment like full owners, sure that the collateral document protected them better than any armor. Rebecca opened the door with her old key. Michael had made Derek hand over the duplicates before they took him away. Marie and Eileen were sitting in the kitchen, drinking tea from her cups. When they saw Rebecca, they didn't even stand. Oh, you're back, Marie drawled lazily. What do you want? The cops took your husband, but not for long. A lawyer's already on the way. And the apartment, sweetheart, is still collateral. So pack your junk. I'm not here for my things. Rebecca smiled. It was a predator's smile. I brought the press. Irene stepped into the hallway with a recorder, followed by a young guy with a huge camera. Hello. Irene began brightly. We're from the City Herald. Rebecca said you have a unique case of renovation and lifestyle change here. We want to do a feature. The women glanced at each other. Panic flickered in their eyes. Scammers love silence, not camera flashes. No interviews. Eileen barked, jumping up. Get out. Why not? Rebecca stepped forward. Girls, your family now Derek's sisters. Let the city see what wonderful relatives moved in with us. Irene, film everything. These curtains, these bags in the entryway. It's a new style station chic. The photographer started snapping. Flashes blinded. Marie covered her face with her hand. Eileen tried to shove the journalist out, but Rebecca stepped between them. And what do we have here? Rebecca walked over to a pile of things the women had dumped in a corner of the living room, preparing for a complete takeover. Open suitcases stood there. Don't touch. Eileen squealed, lunging at her. But Rebecca was faster. She yanked open the zipper on a big sports bag. Papers spilled out, little boxes, clothes. And on top a thick red folder dropped out. Rebecca grabbed it. Eileen latched onto her arm, nails scraping skin. Give it back. That's personal. Shoot this. Rebecca shouted to the photographer. The guy aimed the lens. Rebecca snapped the folder open. Inside was a Document A marriage certificate. Old, worn, issued 15 years ago. Rebecca froze. Time stopped. She stared at the names and couldn't believe what she was seeing. Citizen Derek Highmore. Citizen Eileen Kingsley. Registration date 10 years before Rebecca's wedding to Derek. There was no divorce stamp. Rebecca slowly lifted her eyes to Eileen. Eileen stood white as chalk, hands pressed to her chest. You're not a sister, Rebecca said quietly, and in the silence of the room her voice sounded like a verdict. You're his wife. Irene gasped. The photographer kept shooting, capturing Eileen's fear-twisted face and Marie's pale lips. 15 years, Rebecca whispered. You've been married for 15 years. And our marriage. My marriage. She looked at the ring on her finger. It suddenly felt red-hot, burning her skin. Fake, Marie finished for her. There was no arrogance left in her voice, only exhaustion and the anger of a cornered rat. Your marriage is invalid, idiot. You're nobody. Just a live-in girlfriend. You have no rights to anything. Not the apartment, not the property, not the last name. You're nothing. Rebecca felt something inside her snap. 5 years of life. 5 years of trust, plans, family dinners. All of it had been a lie from the first second to the last. She'd been living with a bigamist. Sharing a bed with a man who called his real wife every night and reported how the plan to rob this simpleton was going. She looked at the journalist. Irene stood there with her mouth open, the recorder still running. Did you get it all? Rebecca asked. Her voice didn't shake. Yes. Irene stammered. Good. Tomorrow it needs to be on the front page. I'll give you the headline, A Bigamist and His Harem, How a Well-Known Businessman Robbed the Wife Who Never Existed. Rebecca turned to the women. Now she didn't look at them like enemies, she looked at them like dirt that needed to be swept out. Get out, she said. Before I call the police again. Now I have proof of bigamy. And that's a criminal charge. Eileen grabbed her bag, trying to shove the certificate back inside, but Rebecca snatched the document and hid it behind her back. This stays with me. As a souvenir. You'll regret this. Marie hissed, yanking on her jacket. We'll destroy you. We have the lien. This apartment is ours. We'll see, Rebecca replied. When the door slammed behind them, Rebecca slid down the wall onto the floor. The apartment went quiet again. Only the photographer shifted awkwardly from foot to foot. Do we leave? Irene asked. Go, Rebecca nodded. Write it up. Let the whole city know. When they were gone, Rebecca looked at her hand. Slowly, she pulled off her wedding ring. It slid off easily, like it had never belonged to her. She walked to the window, swung her arm, and threw it. The gold band flashed in the sunlight and disappeared into the thick grass of the front garden. Now she was free. Free of lies. But the war was only beginning. They had the lane. She had the truth. And she was going to turn that truth into a weapon that would smash their rotten little world to pieces. Rebecca didn't wait for them to come back with reinforcements. She went into the guest room, the smallest one, where there used to be only a sofa and an ironing board, and locked the door from the inside with the bolt. That was her territory, her trench. That evening they returned. Derek released under travel restrictions and his loyal fury. They pounded on the guest room door, yelled, threatened to break the lock. Get out! Eileen screamed. The apartment is pledged. You're nobody here. Try it, Rebecca answered calmly through the door. I called the local officer. He confirmed that until there's a court order for eviction, I have the right to be here. I'm registered at this address, unlike you, Citizen Kingsley. They made noise, then quieted down. But Rebecca knew it was the calm before the storm. She had to move first. She had to destroy their main weapon, their confidence that they'd get away with it. The next morning, Rebecca went out into the courtyard. She knew that at 11 o'clock the council of elders gathered by the entrance building manager Anna Rogers and her crew of active retirees. It was the strongest media outlet in the neighborhood. Rebecca walked up to the bench. In her hands was a folder with copies of documents. Good morning, Anna, she said loudly. The old women fell silent, watching her with curiosity. The rumors about yesterday's police visit had already spread through the whole building, and everyone wanted details. Rebecca, the building manager, pressed her lips tight. What's going on with you? Police, screaming. People are complaining. Your husband says you've lost your mind. My husband says a lot of things. Rebecca pulled a sheet from the folder. Only it turns out he was never my husband at all. She handed Anna a copy of Derek and Eileen's marriage certificate. What is this? Anna adjusted her glasses. This is a document confirming that Derek Highmore has been married to citizen Eileen Kingsley for 15 years. The same woman he introduced to you as his sister. A gasp went through the group. The women started whispering, passing the paper from hand to hand. A bigamist. Mrs. Valentine gasped. Lord have mercy. And he walked around so important. Always saying hello. That's not all. Rebecca raised her voice so even the people near the next entrance could hear. This man you all thought was a respectable businessman is actually a fraud. He forged my signature and pledged my apartment, my father's apartment, the one you've known since I was a baby, to cover his debts. And now he brought his real wife and her scammer friend here to push me out onto the street. More people started gathering. Young moms with strollers, men smoking near their cars. Rebecca spoke clearly, loudly, without hysteria. She stated facts. She hit the target. At that moment the entrance door opened, and Derek appeared. He was wearing dark sunglasses, clearly trying to slip to his car unnoticed. And here's our Romeo. Anna shouted, pointing at him. Highmore. Aren't you ashamed? Derek froze. He saw the crowd, saw Rebecca with the papers, saw the neighbors' contempt. What's wrong with you people? He muttered, trying to save face. Don't listen to this crazy woman. You're the crazy one, yelled a neighbor from the first floor. Scumbag. 2 wives, and you pledged the apartment. Spit on you. Someone spat at his feet. The men looked at him grimly, fists clenched. In a building where people had lived for decades, they didn't forgive things like this. The reputation Derek had built for years crumbled to dust in 5 minutes. Derek hunched his shoulders, jumped into his car, and hit the gas, almost clipping a flower bed. The crowd buzzed after him. Rebecca went back upstairs. She knew now he was panicking. And panic makes people slip up. The mistake started immediately. By evening, Derek began a fire sale. He needed money fast, and cash. Creditors were squeezing him, the lawyer wanted a retainer. He listed everything on a classified site: the washing machine, the new refrigerator, the plasma TV, even the expensive coffee machine Rebecca had brought back from a business trip. Rebecca saw the listing within an hour. She didn't call him to scream. She handled it like a professional. She opened her contacts. 10 years in logistics had built her connections everywhere: pawnshops, resellers, auction houses. She knew the owners personally. Her company delivered equipment and valuables for them. She started calling. "Hello, this is Rebecca Highmore." "Yes, thank you. I have a request. Appliances and furniture from my apartment may show up on the market. They're being sold by my ex-husband, Derek Highmore. The items are stolen. There's an investigation. If you buy them, you'll be liable for handling stolen property. Yes, I'm warning you as a friend. Pass it through your channels. Thank you." Within 2 hours, Derek's phone started blowing up. Buyers who'd agreed to meet called back and canceled. Pawnshops he tried to dump Rebecca's gold at gold he'd apparently taken to turned him away at the door. His name went onto the city's blacklist. He became toxic. Rebecca sat in her room, listening as Derek screamed at the women through the wall. "Why won't anyone buy?" he yelled. "I need cash. I have interest to pay tomorrow." "It's your fault," Eileen shrieked. "Why did you go out to the neighbors? They almost lynched you." "Shut up. This whole show was your idea." Then someone knocked softly on Rebecca's door. Rebecca walked over, but didn't open it. "Who is it?" "Rebecca, it's Marie." Her voice was muffled, oily. "Open up, please. We need to talk. No witnesses." Rebecca thought for a second, then clicked the lock. Marie slipped inside. She looked pathetic. The predator had turned into a beaten dog. "What do you want?" Rebecca asked, arms crossed. "Listen, Becca." Marie darted a nervous look at the door. "Here's the thing. Derek's completely lost it. He's going to drag all of us down. I don't want to go to jail, understand? I just wanted to make money. He promised it would be clean. Get to the point. I can help you nail him. For good. In exchange for you not filing a report on me. You'll tell the cops I was just a guest, that I didn't know about his scams." Rebecca smirked. "You came to bargain? You've got nothing, Marie. You're an accomplice." "I do." Marie hissed. "I have something that's worth more to you than money." She stepped closer and dropped her voice to a whisper. "You know Derek didn't only forge signatures? He's been stalking your father for a long time. Even when your dad was still alive." Rebecca froze. Her heart clenched painfully. "What are you talking about?" "I'm telling the truth. Derek found your father's old notes. About the family jewelry. The same pieces you thought were lost during the financial crisis: rings, a sapphire necklace, antique coins. Your father didn't lose them. He hid them. And Derek found the stash. A year ago." Rebecca grabbed Marie by the shoulders. "Where are they? Did he sell them?" "No." Marie shook her head. "He's not stupid. You can't just sell that kind of stuff at a flea market. You'll get caught instantly. He hid them. In a storage unit. Not at a bank, at a private warehouse on the outskirts. He was waiting for things to calm down so he could move them abroad." "The unit number," Rebecca demanded. I'll tell you. I'll tell you the address and the access code. But you promise I'll walk away clean." Rebecca stared into her eyes. She saw fear, animal fear, the kind you see in someone who knows the ship is sinking. "Talk," Rebecca said. "If those really are my father's things, I won't touch you. But if you're lying..." "I'm not." Marie hurriedly pulled a crumpled scrap of paper from her pocket. "Here. North Storage Warehouse, Unit 312. Code 4815. He's planning to go there tomorrow. At night. He wants to grab everything and disappear. If you get there first. Get out." Rebecca snatched the paper. Marie slipped out the door. Rebecca was alone again, gripping the slip with the numbers. Her father's valuables. A family legacy people in their family had whispered about for years. Her mother had always said her dad sold them to save the factory from bankruptcy during the crisis. But it turned out Derek had found them and kept quiet. For a year. He lived with her, slept in the same bed, ate her soup, and knew he had stolen her father's memory from her. She took out her phone. She needed to call Michael. Immediately. If Derek was really about to run, they had a chance to catch him in the act and return what belonged to her family. But doubt stirred inside her. Why did Marie give him up so easily? Why now? Rebecca looked at the numbers 4, 8, 1, 5. Derek's birth year. Too easy. Too stupid for someone that slippery. But she had no choice. She hit call. Mike, grab a team. I know where he's keeping the stolen stuff. We're going to the warehouse. The warehouse raid blew up in their faces. When Michael's men cut the lock off Unit 312, they found only dust and empty cardboard boxes. No jewelry, no gold, not even old tires. Everything was gone. And judging by the marks on the floor, it had been moved out just a couple of hours earlier. He's gone, Michael stated flatly, sweeping a flashlight across the empty shelves. Marie set you up, Rebecca. Or Derek used her as bait to send us down a false trail. Rebecca stood at the unit entrance, fists clenched deep in her coat pockets. Cold wind poured through the open gates, but she was burning with anger. She had underestimated her husband again. He knew she'd run to her brother. He knew Marie would try to bargain. He played them like pawns. So what now? She asked. Now he'll go underground, Michael replied, pulling off his mask. If he moved the goods, he's getting ready to sell. Or to run. We need to block the exits out of the city. But Rebecca understood it wouldn't work. Derek wouldn't run. Not yet. He needed cash to pay off his creditors. The same $20 million he'd taken out against the apartment. Those creditors weren't a bank. They were serious people from the old world, and they don't forgive debts. They were breathing down his neck. And that was exactly why he wouldn't leave without a big score. No, Mike, Rebecca said, staring into the darkness of the industrial zone. He won't run. He'll come back to the apartment. Because that's his only protection, this cursed lien. And me. I'm his last option. She went home alone. The apartment was quiet. Derek and his harem were sitting in the kitchen. When Rebecca appeared, they fell silent. An opened bottle of vodka stood on the table. Derek looked jittery, his eyes darting. Eileen smoked nervously, flicking ash straight into the sink. Marie kept her eyes down, afraid to meet Rebecca's gaze. Rebecca walked into the kitchen and sat down across from her husband. The warehouse was empty, she said calmly. Well done, Derek. Nice play. Derek gave a crooked smirk. You thought I was completely stupid? Marie told me right away you tried to turn her. We just moved everything again. Fine. Rebecca placed her hands on the table. You win. I don't have the strength to fight you anymore. You took the apartment, you took the company's money, you took my father's jewelry. I've got nothing to use against you. Derek exchanged a look with Eileen. Suspicion flickered in their eyes mixed with hope. And where is this going? He asked. I want it to end. I'm tired. The apartment is under seizure anyway. But I still have something. A house in the village. And land. 1,500 square meters. It's not millions, but if you sell it, it'll be enough to buy off your creditors at least for a while. Derek leaned forward. Greed beat caution. And? I'll sign the house over to you. A deed of gift. Tomorrow. In exchange, you and your women pack up and get out of this apartment. Forever. I stay here and deal with the lien however I want. And you get a liquid asset and disappear from my life. A village house is worth pennies, Eileen snorted. Land prices went up, Rebecca shot back. They're building a cottage development nearby. You can sell it for $5 or $6 million. That's real money, Derek. Right now. Or you can wait until collectors come and break your legs. Derek hesitated. He knew about the collectors. He was terrified of them. 6 million wasn't 20, but it was time. Fine, he said at last. Get the papers ready. We'll sign tomorrow. Rebecca nodded and went back to her room. She knew Derek had no intention of honoring his side of the deal. The second he got the house, he'd throw her out of the apartment too. But she needed time. And she needed them to talk. For real. Rebecca pulled the folder with the house documents from her bag, the one she'd brought from her mother. But it wasn't just a folder. That morning, in her brother's office, she had sown a tiny seed into the spine a bug. Professional listening equipment. She walked back into the kitchen. Here. She dropped the folder on the table in front of Derek. Read it. Cadastral papers, title everything is clean. Tomorrow we go to the notary. She yawned on purpose. I'm going to sleep. Don't make noise. Rebecca returned to the guest room, locked the door, put on her headphones, and switched on the receiver. At first, the kitchen was quiet. Only the rustle of pages. So? Eileen's voice. Will she really sign it over? She will. Where's she going to go? Derek sounded smug. She broke. I told you she's weak. She can't handle it mentally. And the house, is it good? Marie asked. Fine. Solid log cabin. Lots of land. We'll dump it fast on some idiot, split the money. And what do we do with her? Eileen's voice hardened. After she signs? What do we do with her? Derek chuckled. Let her live for now. Like a maid. Then when the bank takes the apartment, she'll walk out on her own. Or we help her, Eileen cut in. Listen, Derek. We can't leave witnesses. She knows too much about the pyramid. If she digs into our old stuff in Miami. Rebecca tensed. Miami? A pyramid scheme? She won't dig, Derek waved it off. She's logistics, not a detective. You're underestimating her brother, Marie jumped in. That colonel is tearing the ground apart. If they find out that you and I and Eileen back in 2012 scammed 200 retirees through the Golden Age Fund, we're all done. Either life or 15 years. Rebecca went cold. That was it. The sisters weren't just a mistress or some random acquaintances. They were his old crew. They'd worked together for years building pyramid schemes, scamming the elderly. And Derek had been in on it long before he ever met Rebecca. Here's how it goes, Derek's voice turned serious. Tomorrow she signs the deed. Then we drive out to the village, like we're taking over the property. It's remote out there. Forest, river. Who knows what can happen to a city woman in nature? Slipped, fell, hit her head. Tragic accident. Risky, Eileen drawled. Reliable, Derek said. No person, no problem. And the apartment will come to us as inheritance, me as the husband. We'll close the lien by selling the house, and we keep the apartment. Rebecca ripped the headphones off. Her hands were shaking. They were planning to kill her. Calmly, over vodka, the way people plan a grocery run. She wanted to run right now. Jump out the window, call the police. But an illegal recording wouldn't hold up as evidence. She needed something solid. Something that would tie their hands right here, right now. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. Michael. Rebecca, her brother's voice was charged. Are you sitting down? What happened? Remember that bank manager Derek was visiting at night? The one you tracked through geolocation? Yes. You said he was Derek's accomplice. That's what I thought. We grabbed him an hour ago. Pressed him hard. Turns out he's not an accomplice. He's our informant. He was undercover at the bank, collecting dirt on management laundering money. And he's been tracking Derek this whole time. So? Rebecca, listen carefully. Derek didn't move the money. He cashed it out. All $30 million he stole from your company. He bought investment gold coins. American Eagle. Thousands of coins. Where are they? Rebecca shot to her feet. They weren't at the warehouse. Of course they weren't. He never took them there. The manager said Derek's paranoid. He doesn't trust units, warehouses, banks. He only trusts what he can touch. He told him one thing, my bank is my walls. My walls? Rebecca repeated, staring at the wallpaper in her room. Rebecca, he sealed the gold into the apartment. Right under your nose. Think did he do any renovations? Renovations? Nothing major. But then she remembered last month. Derek suddenly insisted on repapering the hallway and living room. Said the old ones had faded. He worked alone on weekends, kept the doors shut, said he wanted it to be a surprise. She'd been happy her husband was handy, taking care of the home. And then those strange drywall boxes near the ceiling. For new wiring, he explained. And a false wall in the living room where he mounted the huge TV. Soundproofing, he said. Mike, Rebecca whispered. Drywall. He covered 2 walls with drywall a month ago. Break it, Michael ordered. Break the whole damn thing. If the gold is there, we catch them red-handed. Grand theft plus laundering. They won't wriggle out. I'm on my way. Rebecca ended the call. She stepped in front of the mirror. A tired woman stared back, dark circles under her eyes. But there was fire in them. A tragic accident, huh, she whispered. She went to the storage closet. Among the tools lay a heavy construction hammer. Derek had left it behind after his renovation. She tested the weight in her hand. Heavy. Solid. Rebecca walked into the hallway. Voices were still murmuring in the kitchen, calmly discussing details of her future funeral. She went to the living room wall. The so-called soundproof one raised the hammer and swung with all her strength. The crash was deafening. Drywall cracked and caved in. White dust spilled out. The kitchen went silent. Then came the clatter of a chair falling and frantic footsteps. Rebecca hit again. And again. She struck with pleasure, pouring every hit full of pain, humiliation, fear. The hole grew wider. Derek burst into the room first. What the hell are you doing, you idiot? He screamed, lunging at her. Rebecca spun and lifted the hammer. Derek stumbled back. Don't come closer, she barked so hard he froze in place. She swung into the wall again, ripping out a huge chunk. And from the opening clinking and flashing they poured out. Gold coins. Hundreds, thousands of small golden discs. They fell like rain, rattled against the parquet, rolled to Derek's feet. A golden waterfall. Rebecca stood in a cloud of dust with the hammer in her hand and watched as her husband, her beloved, dropped to his knees and started clawing at the coins, scooping them up with shaking hands, trying to shove them back into the wall. As if that could undo what was coming. My bank is my walls, right, Derek? She asked. Eileen and Marie stood in the doorway. They stared at the gold, eyes wide with horror and greed. This is all ours? Eileen whispered. This is all evidence, Rebecca answered. Down below, somewhere outside, sirens wailed. Not right in the courtyard far away. Just a passing patrol. Derek, breathing hard, rose from his knees. He still hadn't really seen it. Rebecca had only made a small hole so far, and the coins hadn't poured out yet. Only a couple had clinked inside the partition. He didn't understand what had happened. Have you lost your mind? He shouted, brushing plaster dust off himself. You're smashing walls? I'm remodeling, Rebecca said coldly, gripping the hammer. Before the sale. So buyers can see the space. Derek checked his watch. Psycho. Fine, break whatever you want. Tomorrow you'll sign the deed anyway, and the house will be ours. And we're leaving. Unlike you, we actually have something to celebrate. We're going out to seal the deal. He hooked Eileen and Marie by the arms. Come on, girls. Let this idiot choke on dust. Restaurant. My treat. They left, slamming the door. Eileen's laughter echoed down the stairwell. They were sure they'd won. They thought Rebecca was broken, that she'd sign anything just to buy herself out. Rebecca was alone. In the silence, she could hear only her own breathing. She went to the door and locked every lock. Then she returned to the living room, to the punched-in wall. She adjusted her grip on the hammer. Celebrate, she said into the empty air. Celebrate your own funeral. The first blow landed in the center of the false wall. The drywall cracked with a dry, pitiful sound. This is for my mother, Rebecca whispered. For scaring her. For threatening to disgrace my father's memory. Second blow. A piece of paneling flew off, exposing a metal frame. This is for 5 years of lies. For the trust one gave you. For the children I wanted with you while you slept with someone else and laughed at me. The third blow was so hard the hammer vibrated in her hand. This is for my home. For bringing those creatures in here. For defiling the place where I grew up. Rebecca kept striking methodical, rhythmic, like a machine. With every blow, the wall Derek had built collapsed, revealing what was hidden inside. She wasn't just breaking drywall. She was destroying the life he had forced onto her. Knocking fear, pity, and doubt out of her body. On the 10th blow, a stream burst out. Gold. It spilled with a musical clink, bouncing off the parquet, rolling across the room. The coins glittered under the chandelier like tiny suns. American Eagle. Pure investment gold. $30 million turned into heavy, cold metal. Rebecca lowered the hammer. She was standing ankle-deep in gold. Money from her company. Money that could have put her in prison. Money Derek stole to build an easy life with another woman. Someone started pounding on the door. Open up. Police. Neighbors are complaining about noise. Rebecca walked to the door calmly and opened it. A patrol unit stood there along with building manager Anna, who had clearly called them after hearing the crashing. What's going on here? The young sergeant started, then stopped dead. He saw the living room. He saw the pile of gold coins shining in the middle of the wreckage. Anna clutched her chest. Good Lord! Is that treasure? These are physical evidence, Rebecca said loudly so all the neighbors already pouring onto the landing could hear. Sergeant, I'm asking you to document the discovery of this hidden cash. These funds were stolen by my husband, Derek Highmore, through fraudulent actions. I found them while dismantling an illegally built partition. The officers stepped into the apartment, stunned by the gold. The sergeant called in an investigative team. Anna and the members of the building council came in after them as witnesses. They stood along the walls, afraid to move, staring at Rebecca like she was the heroine of an action movie. Rebecca sat right down on the pile of coins. She took a handful of gold and let it slide through her fingers. We wait, she said. They'll be back any minute. And they came back. Half an hour later, a key scraped in the lock. The door flew open. Well, Cinderella, finished cleaning? Derek called from the doorway, stumbling in with a drunk grin. He froze. Behind him, Eileen and Marie froze too. The scene in front of them was worthy of the final act of an ancient tragedy, a smashed wall, a mountain of gold, and Rebecca sitting on it like a queen on a throne, surrounded by police and neighbors. A ringing silence filled the room. You could hear the kitchen clock ticking. Derek went pale, corpse white. His lips trembled. This. He gulped for air like a fish thrown onto shore. Rebecca slowly stood. Welcome home, Derek, she said. Her voice was calm, but there was such power in it that Derek instinctively took a step back. We found your bank. It's not mine. Derek shrieked. She planted it. I don't know what that is. Don't lie, Rebecca snapped. There are 10 witnesses in this room right now. And the police. And most importantly downstairs by the entrance there's a black SUV. I saw it from the window. Your lender's people are sitting in it. They're waiting for their money, Derek. $20 million. Derek lunged for the window. He peeked through the blinds and recoiled. You called them, he whispered in horror. I just told them where to find their debtor, Rebecca shrugged. You have a choice, sweetheart, right now. Either you write a full confession for stealing company funds and surrender to the police. In prison, at least they'll feed you and nobody will kill you. Or you walk out of this apartment empty-handed, straight to those guys in the Jeep. I think they really want to talk to you about missed payments. Marie and Eileen began backing toward the door. Stop, the sergeant barked, his hand going to his holster. Nobody leaves. Eileen burst into tears. Derek, do something. They'll put us away. Derek stared at Rebecca. Madness swirled in his eyes. He was cornered. The gold he'd done all this for lay at his feet, but he couldn't touch it. Freedom was slipping away. His life was collapsing. Then his face shifted. Fear turned into a cruel, triumphant grin. You think you're the smartest one? He hissed. You think you planned for everything? He shoved a hand into his suit pocket and pulled out his phone. And how's your mommy, Rebecca? When was the last time you called her? Rebecca froze. Something inside her dropped out. What did you say? I said, call your mother. Right now. On speaker. With trembling fingers, Rebecca dialed. Ringing. A long, agonizing ring. No answer. She won't pick up, Derek said, enjoying it. Because she's not home. And she's not in the village either. He tapped his phone and showed Rebecca the screen. A dark room on video. On a chair sat Shelley, bound with tape. Her mouth was taped shut. Her eyes were full of terror. Beside her stood a big man in a mask. Mom! Rebecca screamed, lunging at him. The sergeant grabbed her. Easy, ma'am. Derek lifted the phone higher. Don't come closer, he shouted. If anyone moves, I send a message and she's gone. The neighbors gasped. Anna covered her mouth with her hand. The police froze, not knowing what to do. In a second, a domestic scandal turned into a hostage situation. What do you want? Rebecca asked. Her voice went raw. I want to leave, Derek spoke fast. Me, Eileen, and Marie. We take the gold. Whatever fits in the bags. And we take the apartment documents. You sign the deed right now. Here, with witnesses. You won't get far, the sergeant said. The whole city will be locked down. I don't care, Derek spat. Give us an hour head start. Or the old woman dies. Rebecca, you hear me? Your mother's life or gold. Choose. Rebecca stared at the screen. At her mother's terrified eyes. Fine, she said quietly. Take it. Take everything. Just don't touch her. Bags, Derek ordered the women. Fast. Load the coins. Eileen and Marie, hands shaking, began scooping gold into their duffels. The coins rang like a funeral bell. Rebecca watched them rob her home, steal the evidence that proved her innocence. But inside her, a new plan was already forming. She knew she couldn't just let them go. But in that moment, her mother's life mattered more than any justice. Where did you take her? She asked. You'll find out when we're safe, Derek snapped, zipping up a bag stuffed with gold. And don't even think about tailing us. If I see police behind us, I'll call my guys. They backed toward the exit, dragging heavy bags. Derek held the phone in front of him like a shield. Move, he yelled at the neighbors. The crowd parted. They left. The entrance door slammed. A car engine roared. Rebecca rushed to the window. She saw Derek's car peel away, shooting past the lender's black SUV. They didn't react in time. Sergeant, Rebecca turned to the officer. Her eyes were dry and hard. Contact Colonel Winter. Now. Tell him, code red. Hostage. She knew Derek wouldn't tell them where her mother was. He'd killed her the moment he felt safe. Rebecca had to find her herself. And she had a good idea where. The village. He'd been talking about the village. We'll go take over the property. Remote places. She looked at the broken wall. The gold was gone. But the truth remained. And now it wasn't just theft. It was war. And she wasn't taking prisoners. Rebecca sprinted out of the building, pulling out her phone on the move. Her fingers flew across the screen, opening her work app, Logistics Pro. She didn't wait for the police. They had procedures, approvals, interception plans. She had something better. She had her own fleet of heavy trucks. Dispatch, she shouted into the phone, jumping into her car. This is Highmore. Emergency code. I need every available semi in the Pine Grove area. Yes, right now. Block the exits. Completely. Block the highway and the back roads. Not a mouse gets through. She knew Derek hadn't gone far. The video of her mother had been filmed in a room with log walls. An old cabin. The very one he was desperate to get. He was sure it was safe. He thought it was his territory. Rebecca floored the gas. The car jerked forward. As she tore down the highway, green dots lit up on her tablet. Her drivers. Tough long-haul truckers who respected her more than their own CEO were turning their rigs around. Within 15 minutes, Pine Grove was sealed off. Huge semis parked across the roads, forming impassable barricades of steel and wheels. Rebecca turned onto a dirt track. Ahead, an old fence around the cottage came into view. No gate, just an opening blocked by a rusty chain. A strange car stood by the house. Two guys in tracksuits were smoking nearby. The same big men from the video. But in daylight they didn't look like professional killers. They looked like local thugs who didn't know what to do with their hands. Rebecca looked closer. One face seemed familiar. It was Vinny, the son of a former office cleaner. He'd come by a couple of times asking for work as a loader, but they didn't hire him because of a petty theft conviction. Actors, Rebecca realized. Derek had hired cheap talent from his old crowd. She didn't wait for Michael. Every second could cost her mother's life. Derek was a psychopath, but these two were just low-paid goons. Rebecca pulled a big red fire extinguisher from her trunk, something she always kept for inspections. She yanked the pin. She walked toward the gate with a steady stride. "Hey, lady!" Vinny shouted, tossing his cigarette. "You can't be here. Private property." "I own this property," Rebecca replied. "Get lost while your legs still work." The other guy pulled a butterfly knife and started flipping it. Rebecca didn't stop. She walked right up. When the guy with the knife lunged, she squeezed the extinguisher handle. A powerful jet of white foam blasted straight into his face. He screamed, dropped the knife, and clawed at his eyes. Vinny hesitated. He'd never fought a woman armed with a fire extinguisher. Rebecca swung and smashed the heavy cylinder into his knee. Something crunched. Vinny howled and collapsed into the grass. "Stay down," she barked in the same voice she used on careless freight handlers. "Who else is in the house?" "Nobody," Vinny whined. "Just the old lady. We were just watching her. Derek paid us, said we only had to scare her." Rebecca stepped over him and kicked the cottage door. It wasn't locked. Inside smelled of damp and old newspapers. "Mom, it's me. I'm here." Her mother's voice came from the basement. Rebecca tore open the cellar door. Down in the dark sat Shelley. Her hands were already free. Apparently the tape had been wrapped badly. She was sitting on a crate of potatoes, holding her chest. "Mom." Rebecca slid down the steps and hugged her. "Are you okay? Did they hit you?" No. Shelley stroked her daughter's hair with trembling hands. "They just scared me." Waved a knife, screamed. "Rebecca, I was terrified. Not for me, for you. They said they'd kill you if you didn't give them everything." "It's over, Mom. We'll catch them. Come on, let's get out of here." "Wait." Shelley suddenly gripped her daughter's hand. Her eyes went hard and clear. "Don't rush. Since we're here, I need to show you something. Something I've been hiding for 20 years. Mom, later. We have to go. Derek could come back." "He won't come back here," her mother said firmly. "He's afraid of this place. He knows his sentence is buried here. Help me move that shelf." Rebecca was surprised, but didn't argue. Together they shoved aside an old, rotting shelf stacked with jars. Behind it, in a niche in the brickwork, sat a small metal chest. "What is that?" Rebecca asked. "Your father's archive," Shelley said. "I have the key." She pulled a tiny key from a pouch hanging under her clothes, around her neck. The lock clicked. The lid opened. Inside were folders, old yellowed papers tied with string. And photographs. Lots of black and white photos. Shelley took out one folder. You always asked why we went broke during the crisis. Why your father died of a heart attack. We said, crisis, recession. But that's not true. She opened the folder. Look at the names. Rebecca took the pages. Minutes from shareholder meetings, debt notes, asset transfer schemes. And everywhere, on every sheet, the same last name flashed again and again, Highmore. Todd Highmore. That's Derek's father? Rebecca asked, her spine turning cold. Yes. Todd Highmore was your father's partner. His best friend. And he betrayed him. He framed your dad, dumped massive debts on him debts to criminals, then moved the assets out and ran. Your father couldn't survive the shame. He died knowing his family was left poor because of his friend. Rebecca flipped through the documents. The amounts were enormous. Factories, land, shares. All of it stolen by the Highmore family. Did Derek know? Rebecca asked quietly. Of course he knew. He's his father's son. He didn't find you by accident, Rebecca. 5 years ago, when he started courting you, it wasn't love. It was a cleanup job. He knew these documents existed somewhere. He was afraid you'd find them and claim your inheritance. He married you to control you. To make sure you never learned the truth. Rebecca closed her eyes. Her entire family life had been an operation. Every kiss, every gift, every I love you. All of it a lie meant to hide his father's crimes. He slept with the daughter of the man his family had destroyed. But that's not all, Shelley said. She pulled a rolled-up blueprint from the bottom of the chest. Your father managed to hide the main asset. The factory. The one Highmore never found. Object 42. A huge industrial site outside the city. The land alone is worth billions. She unrolled the blueprint. The ownership documents weren't in her father's name. He transferred them a week before he died, to save them from seizure. He transferred them to his only male heir. Rebecca frowned. But Dad didn't have any sons. Just me. Shelley looked at her daughter with a long, guilty stare. He did, Rebecca. A son from his first marriage, someone he didn't like to talk about. We kept it quiet so you wouldn't be hurt. Rebecca froze. A son? Who? Michael, Shelley breathed. Mike is my half-brother? But we thought he was Aunt's son. No. Michael Winter is your father's biological son. And he's the legal owner of Object 42. Derek has been hunting these papers for years. He tore the whole apartment apart, he broke walls, he stole your dad's portrait because he thought the deed was hidden there. Rebecca sank onto a crate. Her head spun. Michael, police colonel. Her brother who was racing to save her right now. He was a billionaire. Owner of a massive empire he didn't even know existed. Derek stole the portrait? Rebecca repeated, clinging to the detail. The one that hung in the living room? Yes, the copy. I hid the original here, in the chest. Here it is. Shelley pulled out a flat bundle, unwrapped the cloth. From the canvas, her father looked at them stern, with intelligent eyes. And the deed? Rebecca asked. It's stitched into the stretcher frame. Derek thinks he has it. He's on his way to an auction right now, Rebecca. I heard him on the phone with someone important. He's going to sell the claim rights to the factory, using that portrait as proof. He thinks he's won. Rebecca sprang up. An auction. Of course. That's why he needed cash urgently, the entry deposit. He wants to launder what he stole through a sale. At that moment, they heard an engine outside and brakes squealing. People in uniform burst into the house. Rebecca. Mom. Michael's voice thundered through the rooms. We're here. Rebecca shouted back. Michael ran down the stairs. Seeing them alive, he exhaled and leaned against the doorframe. Thank God. We grabbed those clowns in the yard. They told us everything. Rebecca stepped up to her brother. She looked at him with completely different eyes now. She saw their father in him, the same broad shoulders, the same stubborn chin. Mike, she said, we need to go. Now. Where? The hospital? Home? No. To the auction. Derek is there, and he's trying to sell your factory. Michael stared at her, confused. My factory? Rebecca handed him the folder of documents and the portrait. Yours, brother. Dad left it to you. And today we're taking back everything they stole from us. And we'll punish them. Every last one of them. Michael took the folder. He scanned the deed quickly. His face turned to stone. Highmore, he whispered. So it was them. He looked up at Rebecca. The tiredness was gone. And his eyes burned a cold fire of revenge. Let's go, he said. We've got half an hour to ruin their celebration. They left the basement. Rebecca carried her father's portrait, pressing it to her chest like a shield. Michael walked beside her, barking orders into his radio. All posts. The target is moving toward the Plaza Business Center. Do not detain. Let him into the auction hall. We take him there. Publicly. Rebecca got into her brother's car. She looked at her hands. They were smeared with soot and foam from the fire extinguisher. I need to change, she said. I can't show up at an auction like this. I need to look like I'm in control. I've got a dress uniform in the trunk, Michael smirked. And for you? We'll stop at a boutique on the way. You'll walk in there like a queen, little sister. And you'll read him his sentence yourself. The car tore off, kicking up dust. Ahead was the city. Ahead was the finale. And Rebecca knew there would be no mercy. The Plaza Business Center glittered with lights. It was the kind of place ordinary people weren't allowed into. Behind tinted glass and security, the city's fates were decided, budgets divided, and assets sold, things that never made it into the newspapers. Derek Highmore stood in the back corridors of the hall, nervously straightening his bow tie. He was sweating despite the powerful air conditioning. Beside him, on a special stand, stood a portrait in a massive gilded frame. A portrait of an older man with intelligent, piercing eyes. Rebecca's father. Derek glanced at his watch. The auction had already started. In the hall sat people whose names were only spoken in whispers: local oligarchs, shadow structure representatives, officials. All of them were waiting for the main lot of the night, the claim rights to Object 42. It'll be fine, Eileen whispered in his ear. She wore an evening dress bought with money from selling stolen appliances, but on her it looked vulgar. We have the portrait. The documents are in the frame. We sell it and fly out. Tonight. Shut up, Derek hissed. I know what I'm doing. He was sure of his victory. He'd stolen that portrait from Rebecca's apartment a month earlier after accidentally dropping it and offering to take it to a framing shop for restoration. That was when he opened the back and saw the edge of yellowed paper. He didn't pull it out, afraid to damage it. He decided he would sell the entire portrait as a key to a billion-dollar fortune. The auctioneer struck the gavel. Lot number 7, he announced. A unique offer. Claim rights to the Northern Industrial Complex. Proof of rights is contained within this artifact. Starting price, $50 million. Derek straightened. Now his new life would begin. The hall doors swung open. The hum of voices died. Every head turned to the entrance. A pair walked in. They looked like they'd stepped off the cover of a royal family magazine. A man in a formal colonel's uniform with medals, tall, broad-shouldered, gray at the temples. And a woman in a strict but stunning floor-length black dress, hair swept up, posture like an empress. Rebecca and Michael. Derek felt his legs go weak. How? They were supposed to be in the village. They were supposed to be searching for the old woman. Rebecca walked through the hall without looking around. Her eyes were locked on the stage. On her father's portrait. On her husband, shrinking like a beaten dog. They sat in the front row. Calmly. With dignity. Michael set his cap on his knees. Please continue, Rebecca said loudly, nodding to the auctioneer. We don't want to interrupt the bidding. The auctioneer, stumbling, glanced at security, but they didn't move. The colonel's epaulets had a hypnotic effect. $50 million, the auctioneer repeated uncertainly. Who will offer more? 60, shouted a heavy man from the back row. 70, someone on the left answered. The bidding began. Derek exhaled. They hadn't stopped the auction. That meant they had nothing. They'd just come to watch his triumph. To watch him sell their inheritance. 100 million, called a voice from the center of the hall. A gray-haired man in an expensive gray suit. A representative of a capital investment group. A serious player. 120, a rival cut in. The price climbed. 150. 200. $250 million. Derek felt dizzy. 250. Freedom. A villa in Spain. A yacht. The life he dreamed about while practicing his wife's signature at the kitchen table. 300 million, the man in gray announced. Once. Silence hung in the hall. No one dared outbid. 300 million twice. Derek gripped Eileen's hand. Victory. 300 million sold. The gavel sounded like a gunshot. Derek almost cried out with joy. He'd done it. The auctioneer pointed at him. Seller, please present the lot to the buyer for verification. Derek grabbed the portrait and, glowing, walked to the table where the buyer and the expert sat. Any second now they'd open the frame, see the documents, and the money would go to his offshore account. That's when Rebecca stood. Excuse me. Her voice rang through the silence clean and cold as crystal. But I have to file an objection. Derek froze mid-step. He turned, his face twisting with hatred. Sit down, Rebecca. You're too late. The deal is closed. A deal can't be closed if the item being sold is fake, she replied calmly. A murmur rippled across the hall. The buyer in the gray suit frowned. What do you mean? He asked. Rebecca walked up toward the stage. Michael stood beside her, his hand resting on his holster. Gentlemen, Rebecca addressed the room. The man standing before you is my ex-husband, a fraud and a marriage con artist. He's trying to sell you a portrait of my late father, claiming the original deed to a factory is hidden inside it. And it is. Derek shrieked. I saw it myself. You saw what I wanted you to see. Rebecca smiled. She clicked open the folder in her hands and pulled out an old yellowed page with a wax seal. Here is the original deed, she said, lifting it over her head. It was kept in my mother's safe deposit box in the village. And what this man is holding, she turned to Derek, Jim, my friend, a brilliant craftsman, made a copy of the portrait in 2 days and slipped aged paper into the frame with my grandmother's pie recipe on it. You stole the copy, Derek. You've been running around with a fake like an idiot for a month. Derek went white. His hands started shaking. The portrait slipped from his fingers and hit the floor with a crash. The frame cracked. The back panel popped off. A sheet of paper fluttered out from under the cardboard. The expert picked it up and adjusted his glasses. Yeast dough, 3 eggs, 1 cup of flour, he read out loud. The hall exploded with laughter. The oligarchs laughed, their security laughed, even the auctioneer laughed. This wasn't just a failure. It was public humiliation, reputation destroyed, everything collapsing in front of everyone. Derek stood in the middle of the stage, red as a lobster, staring at the pie recipe. His lips moved soundlessly. You. He jabbed a finger at Rebecca. You set me up. This is fraud. Fraud? Michael repeated, stepping forward. Citizen Highmore, you just tried to sell a non-existent asset for $300 million. That's a charge. Attempted large-scale fraud. Derek turned his head. Eileen and Marie were already trying to slip toward the exit, but solid men in plain clothes blocked their path. I didn't know. Derek screamed. I thought it was a real document. I'm the victim. The victim of your own greed, Rebecca cut in. She walked up to the buyer in the gray suit. I'm sorry for this circus, she said. But the factory really belongs to our family. And we have no intention of selling it. We're going to rebuild it. The man in gray slowly stood up. He wasn't laughing. He stared at Derek with a heavy, unblinking look. Then something happened that Derek least expected. The man pulled a red badge out of his pocket. FBI Colonel Boyce, he introduced himself. Operation auction is complete. The hall gasped. What? Derek rasped. Michael stepped up to the buyer and shook his hand. Thank you for your cooperation, Colonel. Excellent work. Derek staggered back. You know each other? Of course, Michael smirked. Did you think we just let you walk into this auction? Did you think we didn't know about your ties to corrupt officials sitting in this hall, waiting for their cut from the deal? Michael swept his gaze over the frozen guests in the VIP box. Some were already reaching for their phones, but the signal had been jammed. This auction was a trap, Derek, Rebecca said. We knew you'd go all in. We knew you'd try to sell the factory to the same people who helped your father destroy mine. And we gave you the chance so we could gather all of them in one place. She pointed to the security cameras hanging in the corners. Everything is recorded. Every word. Every bid. Who offered how much for stolen property? This isn't just the arrest of a fraudster, Derek. This is a cleanup of your entire rotten network. Special forces flooded the hall. Masked officers sealed off the exits. Everyone stay where you are. FBI operation. Derek understood it was over. He bolted toward the edge of the stage, trying to jump down and run through a service door, but Michael was faster. In one move, he twisted Derek's arm and slammed him face first to the floor right onto the broken frame pieces and the pie recipe. Down. Michael barked. Handcuffs snapped shut on Derek's wrists. Rebecca. Derek howled, his cheek pressed to the floor. Rebecca, forgive me. I'll give everything back. I'll tell you where the rest of the money is. Just don't let them take me. Rebecca stepped closer. She looked down at her husband, his expensive tuxedo smeared with dust, his pathetic face twisted with fear. You don't have anything left, Derek, she said quietly. No money. No apartment. No wife. You don't even have a name anymore. You're just a number in a criminal case. She turned and walked away. Take them, Michael threw to his people, pointing at Eileen and Marie, who were already sobbing in the corner, surrounded by agents. Rebecca left the hall. The lobby was quiet and empty. She walked up to a huge panoramic window. The city lay below her, glittering with lights. Her city. She took out her phone and called her mother. Hi, Mom. It's over. Yes, we got them. The factory is ours. I'm coming home. She felt unbelievably tired but also unbelievably light, as if a massive stone she'd carried for 5 years had finally fallen off her shoulders. The hall doors opened, and officers brought Derek out. He wasn't screaming anymore. He walked with his head down, broken and destroyed. As they led him past Rebecca, he looked up at her. There was only emptiness in his eyes. Goodbye, she told him. He didn't answer. They drove him away. Michael walked up to Rebecca. He was holding the portrait more precisely, the canvas he'd pulled from the broken frame. It's a good portrait, he said, steadying the face. Jim did a great job. The eyes look alive. Dad would be proud of us, Rebecca smiled. He knew, Rebecca. He knew everything ahead of time. Michael flipped the canvas over. On the back, right on the fabric, something was written in marker. In their father's handwriting. Rebecca leaned in. What does it say? If you're reading this, greed has won and truth has still prevailed. Look where it shines, but doesn't warm. Rebecca frowned. What does that mean? I don't know. But it looks like Dad left us one more riddle. The last one. Where it shines, but doesn't warm. Gold, Rebecca repeated. But we already found it. Or not all of it. Michael narrowed his eyes. Remember Derek yelling he'd tell us where the rest of the money is? Maybe he wasn't lying about not hiding everything. Rebecca looked at her brother. Excitement sparked in her eyes. Home, she ordered. We need to finish the renovation. And find what Dad hid in the gold. The convoy of police cars and Michael's black SUV rolled into their courtyard after midnight, but lights were on in almost every apartment. The news that the climax of the drama was happening right now had flown through the residents' chats like lightning. The car stopped by the entrance. Flashing lights painted the building in anxious red and blue. Special forces opened the van doors. Derek was let out first. He was no longer the polished king of life who'd walked into her apartment a week earlier. Hunched over, in a wrinkled tux, hands cuffed behind his back, he hid his eyes from the floodlights. Eileen and Marie were dragged out next. The women weren't trying to keep up appearances anymore. They screamed at each other, spitting. "This is your fault, you cow!" Eileen yelled, trying to kick Marie. "You said she was stupid. That she wouldn't understand anything." "You're the stupid one," Marie snapped back. "We should have run with the gold right away instead of waiting for this idiot and his auction. I'm going to rat you out. I'll tell the investigator everything how you forged signatures." Rebecca stepped out of her brother's car. She was still wearing the same black dress she'd worn to destroy their plans at the auction. She could feel dozens of eyes on her. Neighbors lined the balconies, some even came down into the courtyard in robes. Anna stood in the front row with her arms crossed like a strict judge. Rebecca walked to the trunk of her car. One of her company's drivers had brought it. Inside were the same plaid bags. The duffels those invaders had stormed her home with. Rebecca grabbed the first bag and hurled it into the open dumpster by the entrance. "This," she said loudly so the whole courtyard could hear, "is your trash. There's no room for filth in my home anymore." Then the second bag flew. The third. "These are your fake documents. Your lies. Your arrogance." Derek lifted his head. He watched his things land in the trash. "Rebecca," he rasped. "Don't. My suits are in there." Rebecca stepped right up to him. She pulled a folded sheet of paper from her purse. "And this, Derek, is a souvenir for you." "What is it?" He glanced sideways. "It's a bill. Itemized. For my grandmother's broken sugar bowl, for the ruined wallpaper, for the emotional damage done to my mother, for every single day you and your harem breathed my air. The total is at the bottom." An officer took the paper and slipped it into Derek's breast pocket. "You'll work it off in prison," he smirked. 10 years should just about cover the sugar bowl. Sewing mittens pays well." Derek started shaking. 10 years, he whispered. "But I'm her husband." "You're nobody," Rebecca cut him off. "Take them away. They stink of betrayal." The police pushed them toward the van. Eileen howled as the bars slammed shut behind her. Marie spat on the glass. Derek looked back one last time at the apartment windows he thought were his. They were dark. No one was waiting for him anymore. When the flashing lights disappeared, silence settled over the courtyard. Then applause broke out. First hesitant, then louder. Anna was clapping. Neighbors clapped from their balconies. Jim clapped too, stepping out of his workshop. The applause wasn't for her. It was for justice. People had seen that evil could be punished. That arrogance wasn't all-powerful. Rebecca walked over to her mother. She was sitting in Michael's car, wrapped in a blanket. She was crying, but they were tears of relief. "Mom." Rebecca took her hand and placed a set of keys in her palm. Her old, familiar keys. "This is your home. It always was and always will be. Order is restored." Shelley pressed the keys to her chest and kissed them. "Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you for not giving up." Rebecca turned to Michael. He stood nearby, tall and solid, like a rock. Her brother. A man she hadn't known for 30 years, who had come running at the first call. "Mike," she said, "we've got 3 rooms. And a huge kitchen. And now we know we share a factory that needs rebuilding. I don't think you should go back to your bachelor cave." Michael smiled. It was a warm, fatherly smile, with little lines at the corners of his eyes. "Are you asking me to move in? As roommates?" "As family," Rebecca corrected him. "Real family. No secrets. No fake walls." They went up to the apartment. The door stood open. The lock had been broken during the raid anyway. Inside was chaos, the smashed wall, dust, boot prints. But the air was clean. The heavy, sticky atmosphere of lies was gone along with the sisters and their cheap perfume. They walked into the living room, to the very pile of gold the police had sealed but left under guard until morning. It was too dangerous to move that much weight at night. Michael crouched in front of the hole in the wall. "Look where it shines but doesn't warm," he repeated their father's words. "Gold shines, but it's cold." He began sorting through the coins at the very base of the masonry, where they'd been sealed in first. "What are you looking for?" Shelley asked, sitting down on the one chair that had survived. Derek was greedy, but lazy, Michael reasoned. He just dumped the coins into the cavity. But Dad knew this wall would be broken someday. He wrote about the trap of greed. Suddenly Michael's hand touched something that didn't clink. He pulled a small metal box out from under the pile of coins. An old tin one, like a tea box, exactly the kind grandmothers keep buttons in. It was screwed into the load-bearing wall with screws. And when Derek covered everything with drywall, he either didn't notice it or couldn't be bothered to remove it, just burying it under gold. "Here it is," her brother said quietly. They gathered around the table. Michael pried the lid open with a knife. There were no jewels inside. Just an envelope. And a thick notebook bound in leather. Rebecca picked up the envelope. Written on it were the words, "To my children. When they find each other." Her hands were shaking as she opened the paper. "Dear Rebecca. Dear Mike. If you are reading this letter, it means my plan worked. I knew Todd Highmore and his family would never leave us alone. Their greed is bottomless. I knew they would try to take the apartment, the last stronghold of our family. That's why I created this situation. I deliberately spread rumors about gold hidden in the walls, so that if any of the Highmores ever got into the apartment, they would start hunting for treasure. But I knew something else as well. My daughter would never allow strangers to tear apart her home. She would fight. And in that fight, she would need help. The only one who could help was you, Michael. I knew you had gone into law enforcement. I followed your career from afar. I was proud of you, but I was afraid my cursed inheritance might harm you. Still, I left clues. A phone number in Rebecca's old address book. Rumors about the factory. I knew the enemy's greed would force them to make a mistake. They would bring you to each other themselves. The apartment was the bait. The gold was a distraction. The real value is you. Your unity. In the notebook you'll find a complete plan to restore the factory and the contacts of people who are still loyal to me. They are waiting for you. Forgive me for not bringing you together while I was alive. Take care of each other. And remember, family is not those written in your passport. Family is those who stand shoulder to shoulder when the walls are falling. Your Dad." Rebecca finished reading and lowered the letter. Tears streamed down her face, and she didn't wipe them away. Her mother cried quietly, her hand pressed to her mouth. Michael stared out the window, his jaw clenched tight to hold back emotion. Dad knew everything. He played the long game, a 20-year move to protect us from the grave. He used Derek's greed as a tool to give me my brother back. If Derek hadn't started this war, I never would have called Michael. I never would have learned the truth. He was a genius, Michael said hoarsely. A strategist. He was a father, Rebecca replied. Rebecca walked to the window. Dawn was already painting the sky over the city a soft pink. A new day. A new life. Below, by the trash bins, the janitor was already sweeping Derek's and his sister's belongings into a pile. Plaid bags, cheap jackets, fake dreams, all of it was being sent to the dump of history. And here, in the apartment with broken walls, the building of something real was beginning. Rebecca hugged her mother and her brother. So, she said, wiping her tears, the factory won't rebuild itself. And the renovation, by the way, won't do itself either. Mike, can you lay tiles? Michael laughed loudly, honestly. I'm a colonel, Rebecca. I can do anything. Especially protect what matters to me. The three of them stood together in the middle of the wrecked living room, on a pile of gold, with their father's letter in hand. And Rebecca knew for sure no locks, no walls, and no con artists would ever be able to tear them apart again. Because they were family. And they were finally home. So, friends, that's the story. Honestly, when I was reading about that auction and the pie recipe, I couldn't help but smile myself. She really played them perfectly, didn't she? But let's talk about it. Do you think Rebecca did the right thing by not turning her husband in right away and instead staging that whole auction scene? It was a risk, after all. What if he had escaped? Or maybe she should have forgiven him for the sake of old memories. Though what memories are we talking about 5 years of lies? Personally, I think she handled everything perfectly. Evil should be punished, and punished publicly, so others think twice. And Derek? Well, he got exactly what he deserved. What do you think about the twist with the father's letter? Does that mean he really foresaw everything? Write in the comments whether you believe it's possible to calculate moves 20 years ahead or if it was just a lucky coincidence. I'd really love to hear your opinion. Maybe some of you have had similar experiences with inheritance disputes or unexpected relatives. Share your stories, we read them all. If you like Rebecca's story and her fight for justice, please give this video a like. It really helps our channel grow and bring you new stories. And be sure to subscribe if you're not with us yet, so you don't miss the next episodes. All the best to you. At the end of this video, a window will appear in the middle of the screen. Please click on it there, you'll find more of our most interesting stories.